Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and as you can see, there's an Epstein background behind me, but because of the magic of time changes, Derek Bros didn't show up. He was a Central Time. I'm assuming he's going to try to show up in an hour, and West Coast Richard Gage, who I thought I had at noon time Eastern, it's 3 p.m. and noon for him, and we've got him in the house, which is just great as we're doing 24 videos in 24 hours to try to combat this new terms of service that changes at midnight tonight, Richard, where channels that are no longer commercially viable can be deleted at an instant. And I think that, you know, these platforms, as bad as they've been with speech, we've still been able to utilize them to give people good information as opposed to all the bad information that's out there in the mainstream media. So I've got to ask you, I know that you've got this new documentary, and I want you to talk about that coming out with Dylan Avery's help based on the Fairbanks study. But how are we going to distribute this thing?
We're going to do everything we can. It's going everywhere. This is a documentary that we've never had Dylan Avery make us a documentary. 20 million people saw Loose Change. And we're going to make sure 20 million people see this documentary because it's about the study that completely pulls the rug out from underneath the official story of World Trade Center 7. Of course, they say it came down by office fires, right? For the first time ever. But now we have the opportunity to get it out everywhere virally, word of mouth. Of course, YouTube, while we are still platformed. 9/11 was one of the issues, the conspiracy theories, if you will, that YouTube cited a few months ago as being problematic for them. One of four, I forget what the other ones are. But
I can tell you, I remember because they stuck 9/11 in there with things like flat Earth, right? They're always trying to discredit, and then of course crisis actors, and I would say the vast majority of us that have questioned the events of 9/11 and the physics surrounding the official explanation are not flat earthers. We're not people that say people didn't die at mass shooting events and everybody's a crisis actor. Yet they still tried to lump scientists, architects, and engineers like yourself in with that category.
They do. And they're afraid. They don't want the truth coming out. They can't afford to have 50% of Americans being aware that 9/11 was the biggest false flag operation ever. It's a lie so big that people just can't even believe the truth of it. So that's what they're banking on. I'm dedicated to making sure every American who's open-minded has the opportunity to see this new film, Jason.
So those that are unfamiliar with this Fairbanks, Alaska study, I had you on in the week that it came out. It's a 120 plus paper. You have your own computer models, and one of the difficulties in verifying this stuff has been that you can't get NIST's computer models on World Trade Center Building 7. So give my audience just a quick summation of what this study does and doesn't provide and how you've been given the runaround on these official models of the building.
Yeah, well, one of the things it provides is openness. The entire program, including the input data, is available on our website at ae911truth.org for those who have the extensive and expensive software and training to be able to run it. At least it's open for architects and engineers and some others. NIST came back and said, sorry, we can't give this to you. They're a federal agency. They're responsible to release information that's not classified when asked through the Freedom of Information Act. And when we asked, they wrote back, said, sorry, it could jeopardize public safety if we were to give this information out to you, the computer input data. Well, doesn't it jeopardize public safety to withhold this information from the architects and engineers who are tasked with ensuring the public safety? I mean, there's hundreds of similarly designed high-rises throughout the country that have the potential of long span beams expanding in fire and pushing, in this case, Building 7, pushing a girder off of its seat on this column 79, and then having the 13th floor fall on the 12th. This is NIST's initiation of collapse theory. The 12th on the 11th, and so on for 9 floors. And then this interior column number 79 in the northeast, it buckles and then completely allows somehow, without telegraphing any of this on the outside of the building, the complete cascading or failure of all the columns and beams inside the building within about 10 seconds. And then the building falls overall uniformly, symmetrically at free fall acceleration straight down into its own footprint. Well, that's bizarre and ludicrous on the surface of it, especially when you look at the video of the actual collapse. We have about 11 of them. They show a complete free fall collapse. I mean, not one column, which is what this means, not one of those 82 columns gave any resistance to the collapse of this building. Well, where did they go all of a sudden? So this is what attracted the attention of Professor Leroy Hulsey, one of the top forensic structural engineers in the country, who we worked with for the last 4 years and raised $300,000 among our thousands of supporters to fund this study. And it came out in September. We talked about it. And what we found is that it completely pulls the rug out from underneath the NIST report, exposing all of their false assumptions, or at least most of them. And for instance, NIST says, well, this fire caused these beams to expand. Well, that could never have happened because the beams are fireproofed. Nevertheless, Professor Hulsey and his team of PhD researchers used all of NIST's false assumptions, even though they were completely tailored to ensure that this building would fall apart in their computer model. And that still didn't come down. It still didn't fail. In other words, a local failure, even one column, column 79, even if it did fail, would not lead to a collapse of this building, a progressive collapse or a global collapse. Professor Hulsey found that he had to remove all 650 columns in this building over 8 stories at once in order for this building to fall as we saw in the video. So his conclusions are absolutely remarkable, and they prove one thing and one thing only, and that's it, which we all knew, those of us who can look at a video, that it is controlled demolition, though he doesn't himself make that claim because he's limiting himself to the academic, technical pieces to what he can know as a structural engineer, forensic structural engineer.
Well, let's talk about 2 big points here, right? You talked about thermal expansion. Now, that's the official reason that supposedly this column gives away, and all of a sudden you have what is it? Collapse initialization. Now, they don't go past the initialization at all. They say it's thermal expansion. They don't give any real evidence for that. And it took 7 years for NIST even to address World Trade Center Building 7, as it was never discussed in the 9/11 Commission report at all, Richard.
No, it's a huge problem. They in World Trade Center 1 and 2 is where they don't go past the initial failure, which is an extraordinary omission in the case of the Twin Towers, which we can get into if you want. In the case of Building 7, their computer model actually goes past the initiation of failure, and what their computer model shows is that 400 structural steel connections had to fail every second in order for this building to fall even remotely, and I mean very remotely, visually similar to the actual collapse of the building. What I mean is their computer model crumples up, as you would expect in any kind of a natural collapse with internal failures in it that would lead to the collapse of this building. But that's not what happens in the actual video. It is a straight down, uniform, symmetrical collapse all the way down into its own footprint at free fall acceleration, as measured by physics teacher David Chandler and many others. In fact, NIST was publicly embarrassed by these members of AE 9/11 Truth into admitting, finally, after having denied the free fall acceleration of this building, they now had to admit in the final report that it did come down by free fall. Gosh golly, for a third of its 7-second fall. That means, again, not one column gave any resistance, but they don't discuss that part. They just simply admit this. It's this big white elephant hanging out there, but it's hidden in a 1,000-page report. It's completely obfuscated, and the rest of that report is so confusing that you can't quite make heads or tails, especially when you look at their computer models, which you can't even tell what the actual initiation is. It doesn't appear to be the initiation that they described in their final report. The computer models show failures on other floors too. So it's a shell game. They're hiding from us what they're actually saying, because what they're saying doesn't make any sense, including the fact that they fraudulently omitted key structural elements in their computer model that would have kept even their own initiation of collapse from ever happening, such as omitting shear studs on top of the girder that was pushed off of its seat on this column 79, and which allowed it to be pushed off. But the shop drawings show that those shear studs, which tie that girder to the concrete slab up above, they were there. Oh my gosh, they also omitted the structural stiffeners on the end of the girder, which kept the flanges from folding. So they omit that and they say, well, gosh, the girder only had to be pushed off halfway off of its seat and then the flanges folded. They could only say that if they fraudulently omitted that key structural piece, which again was in the shop drawings for the construction of this building. These errors go on and on and on, and they're all exposed, most of them, such as the fact that NIST made the exterior wall infinitely stiff in their computer model, which forced all of the movement from the east to the west along the floor and these beams, which pushed this girder off of its seat, they say, in that direction. But that wasn't the case. Professor Halsey and his team found that that exterior wall was actually capable of bending itself. It was flexible. So it turns out that in their model, the same fires that NIST modeled with the same heat and everything pushed that exterior wall out, not the girder over. So the problems for NIST are compounding with this report, which is why we've sent it now to 50 organizations of structural engineering and other technical organizations around the country, and 45 universities that offer degrees in Master of Science of Structural Engineering. So we're looking forward to having a huge controversy in the academic and engineering field out there, the industry, if you will.
AE911truth.org is where you can find that report that Richard Gage has been talking about, where you can find all the new and exclusive information on that upcoming film, which is yet to be untitled. We've had Dylan on discussing it. He actually sent us some behind-the-scenes footage out of San Francisco filming that we aired today. I know it's tough on these timelines, and, I've worked with Dylan, but I'm sure you guys are trying to hammer this out, in the next 3 to 6 months?
Oh, yeah. Dylan will have this ready in January, and that's what we're expecting, hoping for. About the time the final report comes out from the University of Alaska, which now incorporates lots of comments. We got about 80 comments from around the world, and 40 of them were relevant structurally, and he's incorporating the ones that he believes that are merit incorporation and changes, corrections, additions, etc., into the final report. So that's once again going out everywhere and to all members of the media, the mainstream media particularly, because we're hoping to force them to actually cover this story, right? It's the draft report just met with crickets out there, like you mentioned that day that it came out. A sad day for those who are supposed to be the conscience of our country, the media. Just crickets out there. A story that completely refutes the one official government story that supports the failure by normal office fires of this 47-story skyscraper that collapsed at 5:20 in the afternoon of 9/11.
Richard, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this 24 videos in 24 hours. You can support his work over at ae911truth.org, and there's plenty of different videos of you giving presentations over the last decade plus. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for keeping up with this struggle, because I know it's not easy. I don't have a PhD in physics. I'm not an architect. I'm not an engineer, but I've got common sense. And I know that when so many of you have pointed out the scientific inconsistencies that are irrefutable, people should take note. So Richard, thank you once again.
Thank you, Jason. Great to be here with you again.
Thank you, sir. Richard Gage, everybody. Now, if you want to support my work, I know it hasn't been perfect. We were supposed to have Richard on 3 hours ago. We were supposed to get Derek Bros on Epstein right now. But as ways work and times change and there's different time differences, there's been a little hooey in there. It's happened, but we've still done every single video on every single hour, like I said, and we're going all night long. We're doing 24 videos in 24 hours. In fact, if Derek wants to film a video, maybe we'll get 25 done in 24 hours. We're doing more videos today than most channels will do in a month. And you can check out all my documentary films, including Loose Change, Final Cut, and Fabled Enemies, which discuss Building 7. In fact, earlier today when I thought I was going to have Gage on, I played the Building 7 chapter. I got to change the thumbnail for that. Go check it out. Invisible Empire and New World Order Defined and Shade the Motion Picture, also available. You want to financially support me? This is how you do it. It's the GoFundMe, $5, $10, $15. It means the world to me. It allows me to expose the truth beyond that false left-right paradigm that the media industrial complex is trying to indoctrinate you with. And with that being said, I'll see you at the top of the hour with Scott Ledger from Dangerous Conversation. On the flip side, later on, y'all.